need, how many are enough, and how will you know who to give the most of your time to? I think that's, bless you, I think that's probably the biggest and hardest question for people to answer. And if you don't have a system for that, what happens?
Nothing.
Either nothing, or your time gets spent where? With the wrong people, or kind of all over the place, scattered a little bit here and there, and not really targeted or in any logical plan or systematized plan. So that's my main goal, is to get you guys to be able to put your arms around your database today and say, okay, this is the number of people I'm working with today, and I'm clear that I have to get to X number of people, or in contrary, I have to get down to X number of people, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then once I have the number of people right, I figure out who are the best people in my database, who are the people I probably don't need in my database, and then what the heck do I do with them? Okay, so the formula for success as it relates to your database is what? We've heard this a bunch of times in ninja selling. Yes.
$1,000 a year for each one.
Yes. So every person in your database should equal $1,000 in income if you are in flow with them. And that's only if you are in flow with them. So if Duval has 500 people in her database and does literally nothing for a whole year, and then comes to me at the end of the year and says, Maggie, you said 500 people would equal $500,000. I will say, okay, well, show me your flow systems for these people. Consequently, even if you are in flow, but you're not in either the right flow or with the right people, you still might not end up seeing that return. So hopefully, again, this will help figure that out. So let's talk about your database. So if your goal is 100,000 people, that would be really overwhelming. I'm not going to show you how to work that because I don't know how to do that. If your goal is $100,000 in income, you would need 100 people, right? So does that mean if your goal is $300,000 in income, you need 300 people? Maybe. That's what we've pretty much taught, and that's pretty much what we've said, because if you just take the philosophy, $1,000 times one person, I want $300,000, that makes sense. But how do you actually stay in flow with that many people? And that's where we start to fall off. So what even is flow? What do we define as being in flow with somebody? Regular contact. Yes, thank you, Duval. So I looked it up because I like to do just like, what does that actual word mean? And I got this crazy definition. It says it's a verb of a fluid, gas, or electricity move along or steadily and continuously in a current stream. From here, the river flows north. Okay, well, that's like, there's one word in there, continuous, that might be helpful to us. So I was like, that's not the right definition. So then I looked it up in psychology terms. And it says, in positive psychology, a flow state, also known colloquially as being in the zone, is the mental state in which a person performing some activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized, focused, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity. That's more like what we're talking about, right? So I'm good with that definition. Makes a little bit more sense for us. But let me ask you this. Fully immersed in a feeling of energized, focused, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity. Is that what you would consider your flow activities to be right now? You're like, for sure not, right? Fully immersed, that's like really deep. In a feeling of energized focus. Kristen's like, I'm feeling that, right? Full involvement. Right. Full involvement and still enjoying the process of actually doing what you're doing. Of course, right? How many times do you go to meet with somebody, especially if they're not writing a contract with you or signing a listing agreement that day, and you're like, I don't feel like doing this. And you walk in and you're like, this is just not good use of my time because I know I'm doing this real estate review, but they're not going to sell their house anytime soon, right? So definitely not enjoyment in the process of the activity. But then you come out of that appointment, if you're anything like me, and you're like, that was amazing. You're like, I learned all these things about them and blah, blah, blah. This happens to me sometimes when I go in an interview. I'm like, I'm going to ask the same 15 questions, and they're probably going to give me the same answers. And then I come out of the interview, and Tony's like, happened again. And I'm like, that person's so great. Let me tell you about their story. And she's like, oh, God. So it's just natural to not always enjoy the process of what we're doing. So we've got to figure out different ways to go through that stuff. So if we go back to this, fully immersed in a feeling of energized, focused, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity, the question really is, how can you comfortably be in all of those things with a certain number of people? How many people can you do that? Maybe 50, maybe 100, maybe 150, maybe 300. Think about that for a second and tell me what number pops into your head right away. 20. How many more? More than that? Less than that? Maybe 50. There's no wrong answer to this. That's the thing. Because part of it's your personality. You know, if you're energized by people, which a lot of us are, some are just more introverted than others. But if you're energized by people, you can handle that type of relationship and that type of activity. But 300 is way too many. 150 is way too many. I think 20, 15, 30, 40, all those numbers seem pretty good to me. 50, I think I can get my arms around in a certain way. We'll talk about that in a second. So we're talking 3 to 4 times a month. Would you say, is that like fully immersed? I would say so. And that's what we need to do. So we have to figure out what is the number I'm comfortable with 3 to 4 times a month, and then how. So Dunbar's number. Have you guys ever heard of Dunbar's number? I had never heard of it until I read one of those books. I think it's in Tribes. All right, so Dunbar's number, and there's a little visual there on your worksheet that's not in the slides, but this is another just more descriptive one. Dunbar's number is a psychology, a science-based thing. Typical number of people that we can keep track of and consider part of our ongoing social network. The idea here is that once you get beyond 150, you're like, what the heck? Who are you? So this visual says 150 people you have weak ties with, and then 50 become your clan, 15 are what they call your super family, and 5 are your closest friends. And then the little guy in the graphic says, dang, now what was that person's name again? Because beyond 150, you're kind of like, ee. So think about this in any group that you're in, and think about how it pretty much applies to every single group that you're in. There's probably in the office 5 people you're super tight with, but there's almost 100 people that you know their name, but you might not really know who they are. There's probably about 15 or 20 people in the office that if you were having like a huge celebration for a realtor event, you would invite them, right? And there's probably about 50 that you're like, okay, yeah, I know them, but maybe like 150 in the company that you know. So it applies to anything. But the point in this, and the message I want you to hear on this part, is that more people in your database does not equal more income or more success. If anything, more people in your database adds stress, confusion, and complication. So once you exceed 150 people, your efficiency and the amount of effectiveness you're putting out into the database is really going to start to die off, because you can't maintain steady flow, according to Dunbar's number and their theory, with more than 150 people unless you have these really robust and scientific and methodical systems behind you. And I'm talking about like really advanced CRMs. So let's talk about CRMs for a second. I had 2 text messages this morning asking me if database mastery session meant CRMs. And it's a good question. CRMs were really never a thing up until like 6 years ago, right? Like we used Rolodexes. Katrina still has your black box, right? So she still uses an old black box with just index cards in there.
Well, that's like a secondary way, it's other quick, like flip through, see who I need to reach out to, as well as form people, but that's an easy way to like
Pull them out.
pull out, like cross off Katie, tag team, get more done.
Yep.
So yeah, no, it
I love it. And I love watching Katrina go like this because it's like literally like the Rolodex back in the day.
Yeah, it is. It is like a Rolodex. I bought myself a Rolodex. It feels like a Rolodex.
Brenda Jakes does the same thing, broker at Main Street. She has index cards and she puts them on her desk, and that's who she's contacting for the week. So before all of that, we did the same thing as CRMs, but now we get all caught up in this CRM idea, and like I need a CRM to tell me when my client's daughter loses her first tooth. Like we expected to do all of these things, and then we're like, what are we really even doing? How many times are we really even touching people? And are we actually connecting with people? So I think we've got to understand that if we've got 150 people, that's manageable for us. We can come up with systems on our own without some really robust CRM. I'm not saying you don't need one and that it might not be a great tool to help you, but don't get caught up in like, I need it to do all these sparkly things and send me a slap in the face when I need to do a real estate review, right? Like we can do something different. So I think when you get beyond 150, it's not to say that those people don't matter and they shouldn't be in your database at all. It's just that you get spread too thin over too many people. So we just have to make modifications. The other thing to consider, and I use this for Instagram and reality, because like you see these things all the time. You see those posts where like a girl's like Instagram and her waist is like 2 centimeters wide, and then she's like reality, and then she's like really pulls her pants down a little bit and nothing's holding her stomach in anymore. Like reality. Like I think that is so funny. Or like makeup and no makeup. So it's the same thing that happens with your database. It might look like you're doing something great with your database, but are you really doing good things with your database? Are you tracking the flow activities with your database? And again, this is a trap with a CRM, because if you had a spreadsheet or a black box index card system or something, and it literally said real estate review, face-to-face, referral received, low gift obtained, whatever, and you had columns and you had people's names on the side, did I do that? Check yes or no. That's how you track your activities. But a CRM will just say, hey, do this today to Kristen. And if you do it, you check it off. And then does it keep a record? I don't know. So are you tracking your activities? And what activities are working? So if they're working, let's do more of those. If they're not working, let's get rid of that activity. And then how about referrals? How many people in your database have given you repeat business, either themselves or a referral? And are you tracking that? Because what might be happening if you have over 150 people in your database is that you might be getting repeat business over the years, but you might not be getting referrals because they're not thinking of you every single month, a couple times a month, because they're not hearing from you because you're spread too thin among too many people. Referrals is where the magic happens in real estate. If we could get more referrals, you only need 150 people. And if they're the right 150 people, you can make a crap load of money with 150 people. So, couple of thoughts. The reality is, as you grow beyond 150 people, the relationships are going to start to get weaker and weaker. 150 is the number that you can truly build some meaningful relationships with. So where do you go from here? Give me an idea of like how many people are in your databases right now, just so I can kind of tell. Duval, how many do you have? Okay. Leslie? Chris? She's like, I don't want to tell you.
Your database is confusing to me because I know lots of people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like they're the logical people for this group.
Yeah, so the confusion is good right now because that's exactly what you got to figure out. Who are these people? And I'm going to ask you some questions.
Friends, but they're not like,
They're not going to necessarily give you business.
within 2,000 miles of here.
Right. So having two separate databases, like this is my Christmas card list, but this is my business database. We'll help you figure that out. Okay. Dustin, how many do you have?
So it's kind of the same thing. So I have like 96.
In the middle. Perfect.
Yeah.
But maybe like,
But I'm trying to figure out
perfect. Okay.
where to put the attention.
How many?
354, but that's over
Everybody.
like 20 plus.
And
years.
that's normal.
Yeah.
How many do you have, Katrina?
I have probably like 175.
Okay.
I'll tell you. I think the database needs to be like renewed like every 5 years.
Mhm.
It's like junk.
Yes.
Databases is the way. I think I had
Such a good point.
Most you can do with that is send them a mail out, and who cares? How many do you get chunk? It's
Right.
like, I tell Katie all the time, I'm like, I'm gonna make a card to mail out to our people that get and put on there, don't throw me away yet. And just because, they're like, there's junk, and but I think the database things, you need to go to it because
A living
computers,
document.
People are going to use someone else, people are going to move, people are going to whatever they're going to do, not be in a place they aren't going to sell. So you need to like kind of maybe get those at least in different categories where they're not
Yes.
necessarily, you're touching them maybe once or 2 times a year in the same pay
Yep.
business card.
It's perfect.
You don't need to be paying for every month to get them something necessarily.
It's going to tie perfectly into all this. I love it.
You're not going to call them or text them or write a handmail. Get them off the list.
Mhm.
Because, mailing is great, but you got to do a little bit more than that at some point.
Yep.
Just to let them hear you and know you're legal.
Love it. Peggy, how many people, roughly? Okay, Kristen?
147.
147.6. We have a child on there. Not yet ready to buy.
Is that a team size? Yeah, that's Lisa and I together.
Team, yeah. Mary, how many do you have roughly?
I think I had 75, but I'm
Kind of in that transition.
reorganizing that.
Okay,
It doesn't make sense.
perfect. Tina? Okay, Allie? Okay, that's okay. Just where you're at right now, that's okay. Chris?
I had like 260,
Mhm.
and then we had clear it, and then down to 66.
Mhm.
Wow. Because I got rid of everybody that was out of state.
Yep.
That I'm not like in flow with it regularly.
Yep.
And moved them to a different CRM that I just like email once a month.
Mhm. I love
and
it.
I'm not doing like Mail and Lola.
Mhm.
And so they're like completely separate. And I just touch base with them once a month, like with an email.
Perfect.
And then so now my like actual working database is only 62.
Which I think is great because before it was like it's kind of like, oh Dom, I didn't see you there. Dom, how many do you guys have? Okay. So everybody's kind of in that like nobody's like an overwhelming amount, which is good. Like Katrina was saying, start with 1,200. That's just like, what do you do, right? But if you've got like what Kristen's saying and you're at like 250, you're like, okay, that's a good number. But is it really 250? Is it 250 good people that you can really work? We've realized no. So that doesn't mean those people go away. It just means they get some other level of your attention. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So now you're at the point where every single one of you is at that stage, which I love, at that you're all on the same page, at that audit stage. To tighten the database for who you're really paying attention to, who you want to pay attention to, and who's paying attention to you. If they're not paying attention to you and you don't want to pay attention to them, do what Katrina said, get them off your database. Stop spending the time, energy, and money, or move them to a different level of a database. And we'll talk about that. Don't delete anybody necessarily. There's nothing wrong with having more than that 150 mark that I think is like your kind of golden number. You just need the separate level of flow that meets that level of relationship. And then adjust in structure. So when you're doing this, this is going to drive the need for good systems for everyone else. It's going to allow you to create better flow systems for every layer of person in your database. And so now with Kristen's example, she started at 2 something, and now she's down to 60 that are local and here. Now she's like, okay, unless I want to just make $60,000 this year, I need to grow that, and I need to get deeper connections with a few more people in Charleston, which is an awesome, I mean, it's not great to not have them right now, but it's an awesome kind of epiphany and awareness, recognition, whatever you want to call it, to be like, okay, now I got some work to do and I know what I'm doing. Okay, so pick a group of people in your life. We talked about that, and realize that this relates to every single group of your life. And just going back to what Jill and I were just talking about, you can have 2 different databases and 2 different types of flow. You could have 3, but I would say don't do more than that. You're going to have your social group no matter what. That's your group of friends that if they do business with you, that's awesome. If they do business with another realtor, you're going to kill them, right? You all know who I'm talking about. You're like, I just had you over for Christmas dinner and you're listing your house with some flat fee company. Yeah, those are those people. And then you've got your steady hitters that you only met through real estate, and that's great. And then maybe you have like your kids group, like your kids network, or maybe you've got your out of state people. So it's okay to have a couple different groups, but recognize that this system is going to have to apply to every single one. Otherwise you get overwhelmed again. Okay. So here's my thoughts, and this is just a strong suggestion, because if you don't have a system of something, you're going to spin your wheels and not create anything, right? So Dunbar's belief, Dunbar's number, their philosophy, and then coupled with Ninja and what Ninja kind of preaches. 100 people of that 150 are your A's and your B's. They get the most of your time and attention. They don't get your assistant. They don't get an automated system. They get you. You as much time as you can give. When you have white space in your calendar for a week, you're calling somebody on that A and B list and saying, hey, let's get together. We'll talk more about that in a second. 50, from the 100 to the 50, so 101 to 50, those people might be rotating in and out. Those might be the people on your hot and warm list. They might be people that you kind of just met, but you're not really sure. They might be people you've had in your database for a long time and you're not quite ready to give them up yet, but they also haven't quite given you a referral or done business with you. But if they did, they would be a great person to have. So those are the people that maybe you're not completely sold on being in your top 100 yet. And those people, like Katrina said a minute ago, this is a living document, your database. It's got to constantly be tweaked. That's why one of the Ninja daily habits, or weekly habits rather, is working on that database, right? Because this is a constant shifting of people. Some people on your, just like a hot and warm list, they might move from warm to hot, and then they go under contract, and then they go to close, and then they go into a flow system. Your database is the same way. They might end up in those A's and B's for a minute, and they might get demoted back down to just the regular 50. So it just depends. Then everyone over 150 gets a system that keeps you in flow, but doesn't require your intimate attention to them. Maybe it's an e-newsletter twice a year. Maybe it's just a mailer that says, hey, you're in New York, but guess what? I have a real estate company that I'm in partnership with in New York. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's just a market update, something more simple. But here's the thing. 150 is manageable for pretty much anybody unless you've got 2 full-time jobs. Your brain can handle that much. Your emotional side can handle that much as long as you have the right people and they're not like all coming to you for therapy all the time. But if you have a plan, it's even more manageable. The problem is we complicate this because we want to do all these things because we hear that Kristen and Lisa did this and their clients loved it. So now I'm going to do that too. No. Put your blinders on and be like, does this fit in my system? Does Simon Sinek, my favorite author, calls it the celery test. Does this work for me? So open houses were not going to work for me. But if I told Justin Stewart, don't do an open house ever again, he's going to be like, what? Because he closed 9 houses last year just from open house. But if you walked into an open house that I was hosting, my negative energy hit you in the face like a rocket because I did not want to be there and it was not my favorite thing. But instead I did neighborhood market updates and social events in the neighborhood. And that was my jam. Now, if you ask somebody else, go do a neighborhood market update, host an Easter egg hunt for people with kids, they're going to be like, what? If that's not your jam. So you just got to figure out what works for you and don't complicate it. It's easy. 150 people is manageable. And I'll show you how manageable. 150 people divided by 4 weeks in a month is how many people per week? 38. What does Ninja tell us? Have how many live conversations per week? 50. So if you're having 38 from 150 people every week, that leaves room for a couple more prospecting conversations, or don't. If you're having 38 conversations a week, that's pretty darn awesome. Dustin can tell you the game changer from when people in launch go from actually hitting that 50 conversations to like just kind of teetering around it. It's a big difference, right? So in launch, they actually track having 50 conversations per week with people. And when you reach that part, you're like, whoa, I actually did it. And you learn a lot about people when you're having 50 conversations a week. You guys are probably pretty close to that each week. I would say most weeks. But sometimes you're not recording and you're not thinking of it in that way. And that's okay. Everybody needs some time off, but sometimes we just got to jump back in the saddle. So, simple, inexpensive, easy to do. More than 150 people, you absolutely need major mechanics behind you to manage your systems. And if you have more than 150 people and you don't have systems, you're just wasting your time. We're just waiting for the low-hanging fruit to fall in our laps. Okay, so before we go into some action steps, what are your thoughts right now? Fears, concerns, aha moments? What? Nothing.
Tear down a database.
Pare it down. Mm-hmm. Categorize. I'm going to help you figure that out right now. Katrina.
Well, several people mentioned they had like a lot of out of town people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's, I mean, that don't get rid of those because you never know when they might know somebody coming here.
Yep.
And if they've got your name top of mind, you're gonna be the one they're gonna say, hey, hold on, you know what? I have a friend, I have a relative, I know someone in Charleston. Let me connect you all.
Yep.
I have several on my database that are out of town.
Yep.
And have gotten like 4 leads from them, and they don't even live here.
I wonder if I could talk to Philip and maybe get Tracy involved to come up with a mailer that's like a quarterly, like a Visimail, but not twice a month, maybe quarterly or every other month or something, where you submit the database and it's specifically for people out of town to like remind them, hey, even though I'm in Charleston, here's like leading RE, here's where all my relationships are, and like why move to Charleston, or even if you don't know somebody moving to Charleston, but you know somebody in Nebraska and Kentucky, I can help you with that. That might be a, yeah.
That could be great.
Mm-hmm.
That would help us ramp up that reload business.
Yep. Okay. Let me think on that. You know, all good ideas come from Long Point, so I'll bring that back to Katrina when we make that a thing. Okay. So what else? Thoughts, concerns, fears? Like how to add new people?
Yeah, like people that are part of your everyday life anyway. Like,
Yeah.
don't like you just want to like blast them with mailers or Visamail, and how do you just start that
Okay,
process
so
of conversation when you're
give an example of like who you might be like a, is it like a baseball mom or yeah.
As a friend, you don't want all your friends to think that they're your
Yeah, and that you're soliciting to them, right? Okay, so this comes up a lot, and I understand it because it's you want to protect the relationships that you have with those people. So my question is this.
but you want them to know that you're a risk.
Yes, it's a fine line, right? Pam, go ahead. Lola. It's a great idea. And it has nothing to do with real estate. But when they see it each month, they're going to be like, oh, Pam Bishop Realtor. So it starts that subtle. I think starting them on Lolo is a great way. Yep. What is another way to then say, like, okay, so let's just think about the relationship. So if Kristen and I are really good friends, and I know Kristen's in real estate, but Kristen's never really given me a real estate review. She never really talked about what my house is worth. But I know if I have a question, I'm going to call her and she's going to answer it for me. And I, as Kristen's friend, because I actually care about her and I want her to be happy in life, I want her to do well in real estate, right? If you don't have that honest relationship with a friend, it ain't a friend, right? So why would I be upset if Kristen said to me, listen, you know I've been in real estate. We've been friends for 10 years. Can I add you to my database? Can I start mailing you something? Can I put you on Lolo to receive a local gift of the month program?
Could you speak up so we can hear over you?
Yeah, thank you. So when I first started, I was sending the Vismail and people think, and I would tell the friends, I said, listen, there's some things I want to try for my clients. They cost me opinion. I believe that I read to them, and they will, if it's too much or if it's too corny or whatever it is, just let me know.
Yeah.
Touch base with me and see how, see if it's too, drop in the line,
Yep.
or if you like it. And that was a really, and every day, I don't even get a single person that doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's easy with good friends. I think you can do that. We get in the way of that. We're like, oh, what are they going to think about me? And am I going to be annoying? But with that, like, baseball mom acquaintance, it might be a little bit tough. I think Lolo's a great option. Hey, send a group message to some of them, question, or something to add. Yeah.
And then they start listening to how you're adding value to who you are.
Mhm.
And then it kind of comes up. It's
Yep.
not easy either.
Yeah, it's a good point. And maybe just adding them to your social media stuff.
Just gonna
Another subtle way to do it. Like, hey,
trying to get in that habit.
yep,
Hey, like inviting and finding them.
100%.
Wasn't actively finding people before, and then
Yep.
making a point.
You just got to find ways to get seen by them a little bit. And honestly, it's uncomfortable to ask them. It just is. Like when you're in that, I've known you for years and your kid plays baseball with my kid and we're sitting on the bleachers together and I'm asking you what's in your cup and funny, we have the same wine in our cups like at the baseball field and you have those funny moments with each other, but then you're like, how do I get business out of this person? And what does that person do for a living? Maybe there's an industry that they're in that you could support. So it is a little complicated. And sometimes we're not going to get them all. But if we're willing to get a little uncomfortable to ask the question, most of the time they're not going to say no.
You know what, Maggie, too, another way, and I know all of us, everywhere you go, it's like, I was at a function the other night, and I walked up to a guy that I kind of knew, and I was like, hi, and he said hi, he's like, whoa, how's the market? I'm like, oh, I'm fine, and I can stay on, and how's the Barron market? Okay, so that's what everybody wants to, what's the market doing, how's the market? So you know what I said to him? I said, you know what, I will do one better for you besides just telling you now. I'm going to put you on my mailing list,
There you
and then
go.
also in my database, and you're going to receive monthly updates on that market. So, you know, you can do spends like that because I don't think anybody has ever gone anywhere. Even if you go to a baseball game, wherever you are, there is going to be somebody who's going to find out what you do, and the next question out of their mouth is, how's the market?
It's
How's
true.
it? What's happening? You know, so you can kind of tie that into smooth, hey, you know what? I need to put you on my database, mailing list, whatever, and then just roll right into that. I don't think, you know, seriously, what do you do when you get home and get your mail and you've got like 10 cards? And you're like, oh, toss, toss. So I don't know that anybody gets, I mean, I guess there's probably some people that do, but I think overall, most people kind of like to look at, you know,
Yeah.
at least spend a few seconds looking at what you put together and then they toss it.
From the
So-
mailbox to the trash.
Trash,
Yeah.
So I think probably a lot of people I find are that it's the email. You know,
Mhm.
they get your email and they're like, oh, you know, my phone, start calling it, you know, right
Yeah.
away. Then get kind of then you kind of insulate into that.
Yeah, we, as
Like
realtors
starting to
especially,
trust strangers or, you know, kind of.
we get so many darn emails and sometimes I think they're great and sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I clean out, like I'll wake up with 300. You guys know how this goes. And now all of a sudden I get rid of the junk and now I'm down to 100. But I will tell you, if the email subject line has an emoji in it, now you guys are going to know my secret to get you to read my emails. If it has a picture in the little subject line, I'll see it and I'll at least read the subject line. I might not open my email, but I told Adam Perella I'm going to give him the award for never reading my emails because almost once a week I'll send an email out and Adam will come to me and ask me about a question that's in the email. And I'm like, Adam, you're so bad at this. You just proved that you never read my emails again. And he's like, yeah, I'm not good at it. And then he'll stand there and open his email and read it to me while he's standing there. But I get it because you get inundated with it. So I understand. Okay, so let's talk about some action steps of what you can do from here. Break down the database and categorize. So we know we all have to do that. That's a little project. Don't get overwhelmed by it. Don't make it complicated. I'm going to ask you some questions to help you. Create the flow system for each category. So A's and B's, and then everyone else. You could argue that the everyone else gets nothing, but that's not the case. And then we just got to put it to work. So how do you categorize who is in your database? So this is how you identify, or this will help you identify who are your A's and B's. I put on here, who would you call and talk about the weather? In other words, who do you call just to BS? Who do you call to say, how's your day going? Who do you call that you're like, what's going on? What are you up to this weekend? That's one of your A's all the time. Who's giving you more than one referral? That's a B. And really your A's and B's can go together. Who do you spend the time with on the weekends? Really? Those 3 questions probably are the only questions that you need to ask yourself. And if you look through your database and you're like, I wouldn't call any of these people to talk about the weather. And you're like, I haven't gotten a referral from any of these people. And I don't want to hang out with any of them on the weekend. Okay, we need a new database. But it's true, because sometimes you feel like that no matter what. and I get that too. I remember one time I called Megan Gerber, my business partner, when I had my company in Fayetteville, and I was just in a bad headspace, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to any of my clients. I hate them all. They all stink. I don't want to call any of them. And I just went on a tear, and she's like, okay, well, you don't have that luxury, so get over it and call somebody that you like. I was like, okay. All right, that's fine. Okay, so these are your A's and B's, and everyone else is everyone else. The people you would call to BS, pastime, people you call when you're on your commute, whatever. People who've given you more than one lead, referral, done business with you more than once, or even once, as long as they're tight with you and they meet the other two questions. And who would you spend time with on the weekends, the evenings, who you going on a double date with, who you having wine with during happy hour, whatever it is, who you walking the bridge with on a Saturday morning. Those are your A's and B's, and everyone else is everyone else. Okay. Then the question is, who gets what? Everyone gets 3 to 4 touches a month at 150 and below. Everyone. Your A's and B's likely won't change as often as everyone else, as the 50 people that we talked about, but that's okay. Don't be shy to rotate people off your list, but don't rotate them off too soon. So when you're thinking, maybe I could take this person off my database. As Katrina says, if they're out of town, don't get rid of them entirely. Let's just move them to a different system. But what if the person did something that you really don't agree with? Get them off. Because you don't want to do business with them either. Even if it was a personal choice, right? Get them off. Because real estate gets very personal very quick. You don't need that toxicity. What if it's somebody who posts a lot of political stuff on Instagram and Facebook and you're like, oh my goodness, please get away from me. Take them off. Take them off completely. You don't need it. Not everyone is your customer, and that's okay. We're good with that. But before you take them off, unless they are like one of those categories where you just don't want to talk to them at all because of some good reason, take those people off. But everyone else, do one more thing one more time. What am I talking about? Connect with them some other way once more. Nate Buttrick is like, this is his mantra. When you guys know Nate, ultra marathon runner, Ironman athlete, he would say, like, on days he didn't want to swim or ride his bike or run or whatever, he would say, I'll just go out and do one more mile. I'll just go do 1 mile. You run Ironmans, you're not doing just 1 mile. So he gets out there and then he says, okay, I'll just do 1 more mile. I'll do 1 more mile. And that helps him get going, and then he's good. So one more thing, one more time. It's from a book. I don't remember what book. But then you'll know. If I have that conversation with Peggy and I'm like, okay, we just haven't connected in a while, she's staying on my list. Or if she doesn't answer the phone and I send her a text message and she doesn't answer it, I probably need to move Peggy off my list. Don't do that to me. All right, so then you've got your A's and B's. They get as much of you as you can give. Any white space in your calendar that doesn't go to your family or yourself goes to one of those A's and B's. Everyone else gets you, but less frequent you. So not as much as your A's and B's. If you try to give everyone you all the time, you're going to burn out real fast. And then again, don't get overwhelmed. Just make a plan and put it into action. And remember that automated action is good, because otherwise you won't do it. And we need that. Okay, so what would your A's and B's get? Let's say next week you've got your A's and B's figured out. You're like, okay, I might only have 10 A's and B's. I'm going to build that up by the end of the year. But what do I do with these A's and B's? These are just suggestions. So remember, 3 to 4 touches, $1,000 per person. So Visamail. Visamail takes care of 2 touches. We know, we've said it a couple times today, from the mailbox to the trash can, goes in the trash in 25 seconds, but at least it gets looked at. Lolo, use Lolo as a face-to-face. Kristen and I did that last week, actually. We went and got the Lolo. In fact, I didn't even redeem the Lolo. I could give it to somebody if I want to. But we went to Pasture and Grain, and it was great. It was super good food, and it was awesome. An e-newsletter, either C1 Connect or, is that a typo? No. C1 Home Value. So C1 Home Value is their automated, what is your house worth every single month. If you are not telling them that, even through automation, somebody else is. And Katrina touched on something a little while ago that is in the book, the Tribes, where they say if people don't feel like they belong in your tribe, they're going to find another place that they belong. So think about that from an office perspective. This is what I literally lose sleep about. If Jill starts stepping out of the office and she starts like not coming to sales meetings as much, and I don't see her because that's Jill's regular thing, and I start to see her less and less, she's starting to belong to another tribe. And I start to panic. And I'm like, Jill, what's going on? You're an independent contractor. You do what you want, but are you good? Do you need help? What's happening? But it's the same thing with your databases. If you're not connecting with them and they don't feel like they belong to whatever group you're in with them, they're going to go belong in someone else's group. It's just normal behavior. People want to be a part of something. So your A's and B's also get a quarterly pop by. That could be very simple. Doesn't have to be much. You know what I'm talking about? Very, very simple. Monthly voice-to-voice or face-to-face. So a phone call, a FaceTime, or Kristen and I are going to get our Lolo this month. We're going to chit-chat about what's going on this weekend. Seasonal home check and rec. So I used to do this a long time ago. Obviously, I haven't sold a house in a very long time. But this time of year, check in with them and say, hey, we're heading towards spring market. You might want to get your HVAC serviced because you don't want it to crap out on you once it gets really hot. And here's a recommendation of the HVAC service that I recommend. I love these guys. Reach out to them and tell them I referred you. So you could do that a couple times a year. Like spring, you could do get your gutters cleaned, pressure wash the house, whatever. Hurricane preparedness in the October, September season, and then winterizing your house. This is really, really good for people who have investment properties that you've sold them, especially if they're up on Lake Merriam where they're an hour away and they don't know that they had a pipe break for several weeks. Have to tear up 65% of their floors. I might have personal experience with that. But talk to them about winterizing, something like that. So just a house recommendation, house-related quarterly. And then another one, house closing anniversary real estate review. What a better time to say, hey, Duval, did you know that this is your 5th year, 5 years ago, you bought your house? You've been in your house for 5 whole years. Let's go grab lunch and celebrate. And then you tell her, by the way, you paid X for your house 5 years ago. Look how much it's gone up in value. Isn't that awesome? Simple. A's and B's. Is this hard? How much of this is automated? So number 1 is automated, number 2 is automated, number 3 is automated. This can be automated at the beginning of the year because of scheduled emails. You could create 4 templates. 1 for HVAC if you wanted to, 1 for a gutter cleaning company, 1 for hurricane preparedness, and 1 for winterizing your house, pulling your plants in, whatever the heck you want to say in the winter. And you could schedule the emails to go out. So that's automated. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. All you have to do is an annual real estate review and a monthly phone call or face-to-face. Huh? And pop by quarterly, yes.
But also on that seasonal elevator,
Yeah,
descaling your, your tankless water heater.
awesome. There's so many house-related things. Ducks. Mm-hmm.
Dryer duct,
Yep. Super easy. And guess what? You can do this, 100 people, for $3,000 a year. That's nothing. It's a system, it's simple, it's effective, and it's inexpensive. You don't need a CRM to do this. You don't need a whole robust system. It's not going to take you long to put these things in play, and then they're done. So what you need a system for is tracking the pop buys, touching base on face-to-face or voice-to-voice, and doing their real estate reviews. We can handle that. Everyone else still gets 3 to 4 touches, but they're going to look different. And this is just up to you guys. But maybe you still do visit mail to them. Maybe you do an e-newsletter to them about their home value, just because we know for sure if they're not getting it from you, they're going on Zillow and they're getting it from somebody else. Success story or testimonial. Send that out every once in a while. Invitation to an event. Annual real estate review. And then this one, I'm just dying for somebody to put together and work and then tell me how it works, if it's good or bad. But this Facebook community page, my mom does this. And my mom's generation, her age group, like really loves Facebook. So she gets a lot of run out of that. But it's a Facebook private group, just like our office page. That is all of her past clients, all of her sphere, anyone who like has done business. So basically her 150. And they share recommendations. They share success stories. She'll do a going away party for her sellers, and she'll do all the food and take pictures, and then she posts the pictures and she tags people. She hasn't done one of those in a little while, but just little things. And then you start building that community. So when you sell a house to somebody in the same neighborhood, you can say, hey, Duval, I just sold a house to Kristen Ackerman, meet each other. And you're tagging them on social media saying, I just sold a house. You guys are now neighbors. Something like that. So it's intentional and it's not invisible. And that's the key to managing your database. Lisa and Kristen, yeah. Yeah. Past clients, real estate tribe, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Real estate tribe, real estate connections. Just got creative on that. Ask Philip. Yeah, something cute. Yeah. There you go. All right, so think of it this way. You can do a 2,000 person farm, which usually yields about a 20% turnover, which would give you 4,000 potential transactions, right? I mean 400. 4,000. That would be great. 100 people in your database, like real relationships, know 2 to 4 people a year who will move. So if you did the swimming in abundance calculator with that, think about how many potential transactions that would be. So the question is, do you want to work a larger group of people that don't know you, or do you want to work a smaller group of people that know you? And if we go back to that definition, what did it say? Fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity. You can't really do that with a farm because you don't know the people. If you've got the right people in your database, this doesn't take much effort or cost. You've just got to get the right people. And it doesn't mean that like you've got to interview every person. You'll know who's right and who's wrong. So remember, it's a business. You're not running for political office. You don't need friends. Friends are good, but you don't need to be everyone's best friend. Not every person that you meet or that you've done business with in the past is worthy of you and your time. And I really want you guys to hear that, because it sounds like that sentence can like marinate in your head and be like, well, I don't need that person. Okay, well, sometimes we do have to suck it up if you need that person. If they're under contract and you just don't like them anymore, that happens. But sometimes you've got to suck it up. But you don't have to do business with people that you don't like. And you don't have to do business with people who question your value and make you press up against your integrity. We don't need that. So this business is your business, but it's not your entire life. And it will run your life if you let it. So like Katrina said, she had somebody come up to her at an event that said, hey, how's the market? And she was like, oh yeah, nice to see you. I'm doing fine. Right? I had that happen frequently when I started getting rolling. I remember one time very vividly, I went to the pool at Mixon when I was a member. I sat down and this guy, my neighbor, who I've never spoken to, but clearly he was having a great Saturday afternoon, and he came and sat down on the end of my beach chair, like my lounge chair, sat down on the end of it, and his wife came and sat down on the one right next to me. And you know, at a public or a private pool club or whatever, they put the chairs this close to each other. And they're like, so what's going on in our neighborhood in real estate? And I had a book open on my lap, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But sometimes when you do business with your friends and everyone around you, that's what happens. So we got to have the borders. And I was like, I will never work with these people just because of this experience right now. And they probably weren't really paying attention to that. But it will run your life if you let it. So the amount of people that you let into your business has to be a really careful decision. That's why I say relationship businesses are good and bad. Who in your database right now is worth that sacrifice? And once you figure that out, your A's and B's should be the ones that you're like, yes, I'm excited to go do this. I'm excited to call this person. And yeah, I am fully immersed. And yes, I am with intentional, energized focus on this because I only have 100 people I have to do that with. And 4 of the, how many did we put on here? 4 of the 7 are automated. So I can give intense, energized focus on 3 levels. That's pretty good. One's quarterly, one's monthly, and the other one's annually. We can handle that for 100 people. And if we have those correct people, we should be able to pull a good bit of business out of that. So I'm here to help you. I don't want you to leave feeling like, oh my God, I have to go through my whole database of 300 something people and pare it down to 150. Just ask yourself those 3 questions. Who do you call to just BS with? Talk about the weather. Who is that person? That's an A or a B. Who do you spend time with on the weekends or in the evenings or when you're not working? Is a better way to say that. And who has done business with you once or given you a referral? Those are your A's and B's. Everyone else is everyone else, and they get a different layer of a flow plan. So if you're trying to figure out this year, like, how do I get more business? You've got the business. You got the people. We just have to do it a little differently. If you can figure out this one little key, the rest of the year you'll run like clockwork. Good? Okay. I did.